You want to know what real satisfaction looks like? It's watching a 24-year-old trust fund baby get dragged out of a tech conference by security while 3,000 industry veterans applaud. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Spencer Walsh. I'm 53 years old, and I've been building enterprise software since these startup kids were learning to walk. What happened at the Global Innovation Summit in San Francisco wasn't planned revenge. It was just good old-fashioned justice, served ice cold. The automatic doors of the San Francisco Marriott slid open, hitting me with recycled air that smelled like expensive coffee and desperation. I was running on 3 hours of sleep after a red-eye from Chicago that got delayed twice. My usual conference uniform, the tailored suit, the polished shoes, the whole executive package, was currently taking a scenic tour of Denver thanks to some airline genius. Instead, I looked like I'd just rolled out of bed, gray hoodie, black jeans, and beat-up sneakers that had seen better decades. I wasn't supposed to look like the CTO of Metacore Technologies. I wasn't supposed to look like the guy giving the keynote on AI ethics to the biggest tech crowd on the West Coast. I looked like exactly what I used to be 25 years ago, a working guy who fixed things and earned his way up the ladder one rung at a time. I adjusted my laptop bag and headed toward check-in, already mentally rehearsing my speech about algorithmic bias in hiring systems. After 25 years in this business, I'd learned that preparation was everything. You don't get invited to Keynote major conferences by winging it. You get there by understanding your craft inside and out. That's when some kid with too much gel in his hair decided to ruin his own life. "Hey, you there." The voice had that particular mix of privilege and impatience that makes your teeth itch. I've heard it plenty of times over the years, usually from people who inherited their opportunities instead of earning them. I turned around to see this young guy in a navy suit that probably cost more than my first month's salary back in '98. Everything about him screamed daddy's money. The gold watch, the perfectly styled hair, the way he was tapping his foot like the world owed him something. His whole posture radiated entitlement, like he'd never been told no in his life. "Yeah, you," he said, looking right at me with the kind of casual dismissal I hadn't seen since the dot-com bubble days. "Finally. I've been waiting here for 15 minutes. He gestured at a pile of expensive luggage next to him like it was evidence in a court case. "Grab my bags. The car's out front, right? Black SUV. I'm already late for the VIP mixer, and if I miss the networking, my boss is going to kill me." I just stared at him. It took my brain a few seconds to process what was happening. This kid thought I was his driver. He saw a middle-aged guy in casual clothes standing near the door, and his mind went straight to service staff. In his world, people like me only existed to make his life easier. "I'm not," I started to say. He cut me off with a hand wave that would have made a Roman emperor proud. "Save the excuses. Just load the trunk and be careful with the laptop case. Unlike you, I actually have important work to do. Now, I've been in corporate America long enough to know that respect flows upward and contempt flows down. But this wasn't even corporate hierarchy. This was pure assumption based on appearance. This kid didn't know me from Adam, but he'd already decided I was beneath him. That's when he did it. He picked up his messenger bag and literally tossed it at me. Not handed it over, tossed it, like I was a piece of furniture designed to catch his belongings. I caught it reflexively, feeling the weight of his arrogance in my hands. The leather was soft and expensive, monogrammed with HPP in gold letters. Hunter something Phillips, probably. The kind of name that comes with a trust fund and a guaranteed internship at Daddy's firm. "Come on, move it," he said, not even looking at me anymore, scrolling through his phone like I was already dismissed. I don't tip for slowness. Now, I could have corrected him right there. Could have said, "Son, I've been writing code since you were in elementary school, and I'm the reason half the security protocols in this building actually work." Could have pulled out my phone and shown him my LinkedIn with 50,000 followers and endorsements from people whose names he'd recognize. But something made me pause. Maybe it was 25 years of watching entitled kids waltz into corner offices because they knew the right people. Maybe it was curiosity about just how deep this rabbit hole of stupidity went. Or maybe it was the memory of all the times I'd been underestimated in my career, all the times someone looked at my background and decided I didn't belong in the room. I looked at the bag in my hands, then at him. He was already grabbing the handles of his rolling suitcases, muttering something about finally under his breath. This kid had just made the biggest mistake of his professional life, and he didn't even know it yet. "Fine," I said quietly. I turned and walked toward the revolving doors, but at the last second I veered left toward the security access door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." I'd given enough keynotes at this hotel to have temporary executive access, and the digital pass on my phone still worked from my last visit. "Hey, where are you going?" Hunter shouted behind me. "The exit is that way." I swiped my phone against the reader. The light turned green with a cheerful beep. I pushed through the door into the staff corridor, taking his precious bag with me. The heavy door swung shut behind me with a satisfying thud, cutting off his confused protests. The magnetic lock engaged with a solid click that probably cost him a few years off his life expectancy. I stood there in the quiet hallway, looking at Hunter's messenger bag. I wasn't stealing it. I was securing unattended luggage that had been thrown at me by someone who clearly didn't understand basic human decency. There's a difference, and after 25 years of dealing with corporate politics, I knew exactly how to frame this situation. I pulled out my phone and texted Ashley Rodriguez, the event director. She'd been running these conferences since before Hunter learned to tie his shoes, and she had zero tolerance for people who treated staff like furniture. "Ashley, I'm here early." Came in through the back entrance. Had a small issue with a confused attendee in the lobby. "I'll explain later. Also, I'm holding some lost property that needs to be secured." For the first time that day, I smiled. The kid wanted me to handle his baggage? Fine. I was going to handle it in front of 3,000 people, and he was going to learn why you never judge a book by its cover. The freight elevator hummed smoothly as it carried me to the executive floor. I couldn't help but peek inside Hunter's bag. Just the outside pockets, of course. Professional curiosity, you understand. His business cards spilled out like confetti. Hunter P. Phillips, visionary, growth hacker, disruption specialist. The tagline read, "Monetizing tomorrow's mindset today." I actually laughed out loud. It sounded like something a broken AI would generate after being fed nothing but LinkedIn posts from unemployed MBA students. In my 25 years in this business, I'd seen 1,000 Hunter Phillips come and go. They all had the same playbook: big words, bigger egos, and zero substance to back it up. Ashley met me at the VIP registration desk, looking stressed until she saw me. "Spencer, thank God. I saw your luggage got sent to Denver and was about to buy out the nearest men's warehouse." "Denver's probably lovely this time of year," I said, patting Hunter's bag. "I'll manage with what I packed in my carry-on. This here is evidence from my encounter downstairs." Ashley frowned at the expensive leather bag. "Evidence of what?" "A young man threw this at me and demanded I drive him around town. When I hesitated, he questioned my competence and my ability to understand English. Apparently, he mistook me for hotel staff." Ashley's expression hardened. She'd been running conferences for 15 years and had seen every flavor of tech industry ego. The entitled ones, the brilliant ones, and the dangerous combination of entitled and stupid that Hunter represented. "Point him out to me," she said, her voice getting that edge that made vendors nervous. "I'll revoke his badge before lunch." "No," I said quickly, holding up a hand. "Let him attend everything. Let him sit wherever he wants. Just keep this bag safe until after my keynote. Consider it evidence for a case study." "Spencer," she warned, but I could see she was fighting a smile. "What are you planning?" "A learning experience about making assumptions. Sometimes the best way to teach someone about respect is to let them demonstrate what happens when you don't have it." I handed the bag to her assistant, who handled it like it might explode. "I need a shower and 20 minutes of quiet before I have to be on. But first, what's the schedule looking like for the growth hacking panel at 2 o'clock? Hall B. It's one of the smaller venues. Why? Market research. I want to understand the current state of professional development in our industry. Ashley gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I was up to, but she wasn't going to stop me. Hall B it is. Just try not to destroy the kid completely. His type already has enough problems with reality. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the back row of Hall B watching Hunter hold court on a panel about disrupting traditional hierarchies. The irony was so thick you could serve it for dinner with a side of humble pie. The panel was supposed to be about sustainable growth strategies, but Hunter had somehow positioned himself as the alpha expert, interrupting the moderator and mansplaining basic business concepts to a woman with 20 years more experience than him. I recognized her, Sarah Collins from Innovate Tech. She'd been building successful companies while Hunter was still learning multiplication tables. But it was his answer about sustainable growth that really caught my attention and gave me everything I needed for later. "Sustainable is a trap," Hunter announced, leaning forward like he was sharing the secrets of the universe. "It's old school thinking, legacy mentality. We don't want sustainable, we want explosive. If you're not breaking things, you're not building anything worth having." A few people in the sparse audience, maybe 40 chairs occupied out of 200, shifted uncomfortably. But Hunter was just getting warmed up, and I could see the other panelists realizing they were sharing the stage with a train wreck in progress. "At my startup," he continued, "we don't have employees, we have ninjas. We don't have meetings, we have collisions. It's about flattening hierarchies completely. The old guard, the dinosaurs in corner offices, they're obsessed with process and compliance and playing it safe. We're obsessed with shipping and disrupting and moving fast." I took out my phone and made a careful note. The old guard are dinosaurs in corner offices. Phillips, 2:15 p.m. Sarah Collins tried to redirect the conversation back to actual business strategy, but Hunter cut her off mid-sentence. "Actually, let me jump in here with a real-world example that illustrates my point perfectly." The moderator looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, but Hunter was unstoppable now. "Earlier today, I had to deal with what you'd call a legacy service provider. Classic victim mentality, slow, confused, couldn't understand basic instructions or urgency. That's the problem with today's workforce in traditional industries. No hustle, no drive. You have to assert dominance immediately, establish the hierarchy from the first interaction. Alpha energy isn't toxic like the PC crowd claims. It's efficient. It's how you get things done in the real world." The audience was getting restless. A young woman 2 seats away whispered to her friend, "Is this guy serious? He sounds like every startup bro who's ever tried to explain cryptocurrency to me at a networking event." I smiled and stood up quietly. I had everything I needed for the main event. An hour later, I was backstage in the main hall watching 3,000 people take their seats. The energy was completely different from Hunter's sad little panel. This was the big show, and I could feel the anticipation humming through the massive space like electricity. The main hall was a beast of a venue. It seated 3,000 people and was packed to capacity with the biggest names in tech, manufacturing, and enterprise software. These weren't startup kids playing with daddy's money. These were people who'd built real companies, created real jobs, and solved real problems. My people. Mike, the stage manager, was counting down with military precision. 2 minutes, Spencer, you look great. That casual look actually works perfectly for your message today." Through a gap in the curtain, I spotted Hunter in the second row center, chatting up some Google engineer, probably trying to pitch his mindset monetization strategy. He looked completely relaxed, like a man who thought he'd gotten away with something. His phone was out and ready to record my keynote for his social media channels, no doubt planning to post it with some caption about being inspired by industry leaders. The kid had no idea he was about to become the main character in a very different kind of story. The announcer's voice boomed through the massive sound system, rattling the floorboards. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker. He is the architect of the Secure Flow Protocol, CTO of Metacore Technologies, and a 25-year veteran of enterprise software development who has guided 3 companies through successful IPOs. Please welcome Spencer Walsh." The applause hit like a physical wave as I walked onto the stage. 25 years of conferences had taught me how to read an audience, and this one was primed and ready. The lights were blinding, but I could see the front rows clearly enough to watch Hunter's face as recognition dawned. I found him immediately. He was clapping politely, that networking smile still intact. Then he really looked at me, and I watched his brain short-circuit in real time. The polite clapping stopped mid-motion. His mouth literally fell open as he tried to reconcile hotel driver with keynote speaker. He squinted like he was hoping it was some kind of optical illusion, maybe a twin brother or a case of mistaken identity. I looked right at him and tilted my head slightly, the same way I'd looked at him in the lobby when he threw his bag. Recognition hit him like a freight train carrying a full load of regret. He turned to the Google engineer next to him and mouthed something that looked like, "That's him. That's the driver." The engineer looked confused, then concerned, then started edging away from the radioactive panic zone that Hunter had become. A murmur started rippling through the front rows as word spread. "That's the guy from the lobby. He was sitting in the back at Hunter's panel. Oh my God, look at his face." Hunter tried to sink into his chair, pulling his jacket collar up like he could somehow hide from 3,000 pairs of eyes. But there was nowhere to go. The nearest exit was 100 yards away through a packed crowd, and security was stationed at every aisle. I stepped up to the microphone, and the room went dead silent. You could have heard a smartphone drop. "Perception," I said, letting my voice fill the massive space with the confidence that comes from 25 years of earning your place in rooms like this. Perception shapes everything we do. We see a suit, we think success. We see a hoodie, we think slacker. We see a 53-year-old man standing in a hotel lobby, and we think. I paused, letting the word hang in the air like a sword about to drop. Help. Hunter flinched like I'd hit him with a cattle prod. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out right there in the second row. Today I want to talk about bias in our algorithms. Not just in our code, but in our corporate culture. Because sometimes the data is right in front of you, but your assumptions create blind spots that can cost you everything. The audience was hooked. They didn't know the full story yet, but they could sense blood in the water, and everyone loves watching arrogance get its comeuppance. I clicked my remote. The giant screen behind me displayed one word in stark white letters: assumptions. Before we dive into algorithmic bias detection in hiring systems, I want to share some field data I collected this morning, right here in the Marriott lobby downstairs. I clicked again. The screen showed a stock photo of an angry businessman yelling at a phone, the kind of generic image that could represent any corporate jackass having a meltdown. I arrived tired, dressed casually, standing near the entrance. A young man, let's call him the disruptor, approached me. A ripple of knowing laughter went through the crowd. Everyone in tech knew that type. He didn't see a keynote speaker. He didn't see a 25-year veteran of this industry. He didn't even see a human being with basic dignity. He saw a function, a mechanism to transport his luggage from point A to point B. The audience made that sharp collective intake of breath that means you've got them completely. He threw his bag at me, I continued, my voice getting harder. Literally threw it. And when I hesitated, he didn't question his assumption. He doubled down. He questioned my competence, my work ethic, my ability to understand English. Someone in the back shouted, "No way!" and scattered applause broke out. Now I could have corrected him immediately. Could have said, "Son, I've been building enterprise systems since before you learned to drive, and I probably make more in a quarter than you'll see in your first 5 years." But I wanted to see how far the error would propagate through his decision-making process. I clicked the remote again. The screen showed a photo of Hunter's messenger bag with the HPP monogram clearly visible. Hunter made a sound like a deflating balloon and put his head in his hands. The Google engineer next to him was now openly staring, clearly trying to figure out if he should know this guy or if he should change seats. I secured the unattended luggage and decided to observe the disruptor in his natural habitat. I attended a panel this afternoon on growth hacking and disruption strategies. I pulled out my phone and read from my notes like I was citing a peer-reviewed study. Quote, "The old guard are dinosaurs in corner offices." Quote, "Alpha energy isn't toxic, it's efficient." The room erupted. Laughter, groans, scattered boos, and growing applause. It was beautiful chaos, the sound of 3,000 professionals who dealt with people like Hunter, their entire careers finally seeing one get his comeuppance. "Efficiency," I said, putting my phone away and gripping the podium. "Let's talk about efficiency. Is it efficient to alienate the person who controls the platform you're hoping to speak from? Is it efficient to treat colleagues like furniture until you realize they have credentials you respect?" My voice got harder, carrying 25 years of frustration with people who confused privilege with competence. This industry is full of brilliant minds and innovative thinkers, but it's also infected with this toxic assumption that some people matter and others don't. We're building AI systems that will reshape how society functions. If the people building these systems can't distinguish between a colleague and a servant, we're all in serious trouble. I looked directly at Hunter, who was now staring at his knees and visibly shaking. People around him were turning to stare, phones coming out, the social media machine already spinning up. So to our disruptor, wherever you're sitting in this audience, thank you for the perfect case study. You've provided invaluable data on what we need to debug from our professional culture before we can trust ourselves to build ethical AI. I clicked to my actual presentation title, Bias Detection in Hiring Algorithms, Building Systems That Actually Work. Now let's talk about building technology that serves everyone, not just the people who look like us. For the next 35 minutes, I gave the speech I'd prepared about algorithmic bias, but every mention of assumptions, bias, or blind spots sent ripples of awareness toward the second row. Hunter sat through the entire presentation because leaving would be admitting guilt. He had to endure the longest 35 minutes of his professional life while I systematically dismantled everything he represented. The standing ovation at the end lasted 4 full minutes. It wasn't just appreciation for the technical content, it was catharsis. 3,000 people who'd been disrespected, underestimated, or dismissed based on their appearance, age, or background were celebrating justice served in real time. During the Q&A, a young woman in a Women in Tech t-shirt stood up. "Mr. Walsh, you talked about changing culture, but how do we actually implement that when people like the disruptor keep getting hired and promoted? When they dominate conversations and decision-making?" The room went completely silent. Everyone wanted this answer. "We stop tolerating it," I said simply. "We stop confusing arrogance with competence. We stop rewarding volume over value, and we stop letting them control the conversation." That's when Hunter made his final, fatal mistake. He stood up without a microphone and shouted across the hall, "This is completely unfair. You're making me look like a villain for a simple misunderstanding. I didn't know who you were." The crowd gasped. He'd just confessed to everything in front of 3,000 witnesses and God knows how many live stream viewers. "And that," I said calmly into my microphone, my voice carrying easily over his panic, "is exactly the problem. You only treat people with respect when you know their title and net worth. That's not respect, that's calculation." "I'm a speaker at this conference," Hunter yelled, stepping into the aisle like he was making some kind of stand. "I have a right to be here. You basically stole my bag." "Security," I said, not shouted, not demanded, just stated it like I was ordering my morning coffee. 2 professional security guards who'd been stationed near the stage moved swiftly but calmly toward him. Hunter saw them coming and made one last desperate attempt to salvage his dignity. "I'm a founder. My presentation was about innovation. Do you know who my father is?" "You're a distraction," I said into the microphone with the kind of dismissive finality that ends careers. "Goodbye, Hunter." The guards didn't drag him out. They were too professional for theatrics, but they escorted him with enough visible authority that his feet moved faster than he intended. As they marched him up the center aisle toward the exit, something beautiful happened. The audience started clapping. It began as scattered applause from the back rows, then built into a rhythmic, thunderous farewell. 3,000 people giving him the slowest, most sarcastic standing ovation in conference history. Hunter twisted in their grip, looking back at the stage with pure fury and humiliation on his face. He was shouting something, but the applause completely swallowed his words. He'd been muted, deleted, removed from the conversation permanently. The doors closed behind him with a satisfying thud that somehow carried over the applause. "Next question," I said, and the room burst into laughter and cheers. Backstage afterward, Ashley was grinning so hard I thought her face might break. "Spencer, that was incredible. You're a distraction is going to be quoted for years. Just make sure I get credited when people use it," I said, unclipping my microphone. "Speaking of which, I assume his bag is still secure?" "It is, and I revoked his conference credentials while you were speaking. Hotel security escorted him to checkout. His company's been getting calls about him for the last hour. By the time I got back to my suite that evening, the internet had done what it does best. Turned Hunter into a cautionary tale. Alpha Energy is efficient was trending globally. Someone had already cut together a compilation video of his panel quotes with footage of his removal. It had 500,000 views in 3 hours. But it wasn't just memes and mockery. Real change was happening. By midnight, I had emails from 5 major companies asking about bias training for their leadership teams. Harvard Business Review wanted an article about professional respect in tech culture. Hunter's startup lost its funding within 48 hours. His LinkedIn went from disruption specialist to seeking new opportunities to completely deactivated in less than a week. 3 months later, I used my speaking fees from that quarter to establish the Professional Respect Initiative, a scholarship program for people who understand that competence matters more than connections, and respect isn't negotiable. The first recipient was a 34-year-old former mechanic studying cybersecurity at night while working hotel maintenance. She'd been holding doors and saying please and thank you for years without expecting anything in return. Now she's a senior security analyst at a Fortune 500 company and she still holds doors. That's real disruption.